after more than 6.
All right, we're gonna do the JFK. Okay. Oh, someone ran in here. Hello. Look, the mayor is here. Okay, go, Fiona. Go. We can still look at Clarissa with a critical eye. I do. Of course I do. It could be a Ukrainian soldier dressed up like a civilian. Bro, it's so funny when it's so funny when people just want to be like, you're doing Israel propaganda for Russia. It's fucking ridiculous, dude. Come on. Yeah. Chatter is one step removed from being like, no, dude, you don't understand. The Ukrainians are using human shields. Ukrainians are using human shields. Oh my God. Yeah, Ukraine wood. They're doing Pali wood in Gaza, and they're doing Ukraini wood in Ukraine. Slava wood. Telegenic babushkas. All right, we're going to talk about the JFK assassination files that are being released. A question I have on my mind is if they're releasing the JFK assassination files, why have they not released the Epstein files?
60 years, we are finally getting access to some government files related to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. There are 80,000 of them, so we've got a whole team of CBS News people working their way through the documents. That includes Caitlin Huey-Burns, who's going to join us now. Caitlin, good morning. What have you and the others found so far?
Hey, Tony, good morning. Well, President Trump told reporters ahead of this release that there would be a lot of reading to do, and boy, he was not wrong. I can personally...
You're joking, but a German friend of mine literally said that Ukrainians are hiding military equipment and soldiers in Ukraine weeks after the start of the war. Wow. Ukrainians are hiding soldiers in Ukraine? That's crazy. I can't believe that they have a standing military. Why do they have that? Did you see the parts on the Hungarian Revolution? I did. I mean, but this is like, guys, no shit. The CIA actively played a role in mass instability against a foreign adversary like the USSR. Like, yeah, no shit. That still doesn't change the dynamic in general in terms of like overall discontent with the USSR. And also it doesn't, make the Russian actions in that regard in terms of suppressing any sort of movement against the USSR that was fairly violent appropriate. Like, it's okay to recognize the wrongs of previous socialist formations. I certainly do. And the reason for why I recognize them, regardless of not being a anti-USSR kind of guy in general, is because it's important to learn from the mistakes of previous formations so you don't repeat the same mistakes.
Attest to that. These documents total 80,000 pages. And as you mentioned, we had a whole team of reporters here at CBS going through them. And many of these files have already been released before. And if you're one of those who were looking for any proof of conspiracy, you will likely be disappointed.
More than 60 years after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the Trump administration released 80,000 pages of records to the public Tuesday night relating to his murder. Culling through the files is a tedious task. The scanned documents, many handwritten and going back over 60 years, can be at times difficult to read and decipher. Lee Harvey Oswald, the man who shot Kennedy in November of 1963, is mentioned 55 times in the documents, including in this 79-page summary of CIA surveillance operations that monitored Oswald's movements in Mexico City, where he visited the Russian and Cuban embassies ahead of the assassination. And
oh, the JFK files revealed once again the government position that it was actually Cuba. Hey guys, Lee Harvey Oswald, not a Navy officer, Navy intelligence officer. Okay, definitely not like actively engaging in disruptive as a member of intelligence. Certainly not engaging in following the CIA handbook field manual of like disrupting any sort of revolutionary action from taking place. It's actually real. He didn't visit those embassies as a Fed. He visited them as a sympathizer. Definitely a Cuban asset, not an American one.
in this letter written in 1978 from a man to the British ambassador in Washington. In it, he says he told...
I'm so glad that they revealed this. Something that they've, said over and over again.
Immigration officials in London that in July of 1963, just 4 months before the assassination of a plan by Oswald to kill Kennedy.
It's possible, which is what makes this so scary. Wait, what? No.
But so far, the trove of mostly unredacted files show there is nothing that changes he was the sole assassin.
The documents, they don't show conspiracy.
David Barrett, a professor of political science at Villanova University who studies the Kennedy presidency, says that while these files are not a smoking gun, they provide government transparency.
Maybe it will lessen the suspicion that the FBI or the CIA or some other government leader or agency were involved in a plot to kill Kennedy.
The Trump administration says the release represents a campaign promise kept, a promise he made the day Robert F. Kennedy Jr. endorsed him.
I have never had more people ask me, please, sir, release the documents on the Kennedy assassination, and we're going to do that.
And during a visit to the Kennedy Center on Monday, he announced they were ready to go.
So people have been waiting for decades for this. I don't believe we're going to redact anything.
Now, anyone can see these documents on the National Archives website, and more are going to be added once they are digitized, but others still remain under court seal. Now, you may remember the president's executive order also demanded the files from the assassinations of Robert F. Kennedy and of Martin Luther King Jr. to be released, but it's not yet clear when those will be published. Gail?
All right, Caitlin, got it. Thank you very much.
I've been in Spokane for 39 years.
I hate when this chat becomes the Alex Jones of the left moment. Something like this happens. What do you mean? My favorite fact about Lee Harvey is that he visited the USSR and Cuba with the intent of denouncing his American citizenship, only to be found too annoying by the USSR, and he tore up his passport for no reason. Yeah, and then with very little scrutiny from the American government, was allowed to fucking return and operate freely inside of U.S. boundaries. I find that very interesting, personally. I guess it's one of those. It is one of those conspiracies that I'm like not firmly on the government side on. Like I think that the established narrative is not the correct one. I don't think it is. Yeah, before we get to the Spokane, Washington, or Spokane, not Spokane, Washington. Before we get to the GOP lawmakers eating all the smoke from their own from their own constituents. Let's continue with the JFK stuff, because the original anti-imperialists who were smeared as so-called tankies were correct. The commander of the U.S.-backed insurgents in the violent 1956 counter-revolution attempt in socialist Hungary, General Bela Karali, was a CIA asset. This has been confirmed by the JFK records. So my attitude on this is the same attitude that I have. The same attitude that I have with discontent in general in under Soviet rule. Okay. I don't think that the actions of the USSR were appropriate, regardless of the fact that the CIA certainly played a role in this. Now, the CIA playing a role in this doesn't also change the dynamic that there was also real discontent. No country is powerful enough to whip enough votes or to create this level of backlash. They can only exacerbate existing tensions. Okay? As far as the discontent, as far as the discontent goes, of course the CIA was helping the Hungarian counter-revolution. Like, it's just not. This is basic CIA shit. That's not surprising to me at all. What's more interesting for me is, like, what the USSR's attempt in squashing this protest looked like and why they were a failure in general. A copy of a letter of the subject's file dated 22nd of November 1963, signed by the subject Secretary for Military Affairs, Executive Committee, Movimento Democrata Cristiano, is addressed to Major General Bela Karali, President, Hungarian Freedom Fighters Federation, Inc. Offered the services of the MDC in arranging meetings and discussions with other anti-Castro organizations and the Hungarian Freedom Fighters. The Hungarian Freedom Fighters was interested in information on the MDC before granting approval of contact between two organizations. Subject, a 32-year-old Cuban exile, was from a wealthy Cuban family, and in Cuba, he was a banker. He was granted a POA in December 1959 and an NOA in February 1960 for the use of FP agent in Havana, Cuba. A copy letter in subject's file dated 22nd of November 1963, signed by subject as Secretary of Military Affairs, is addressed to Major General Bela Karali, President, Hungarian Freedom Fighters Federation, with other anti-Castro organizations. Bela Karali dies at 97, led revolt in Hungary. JFK release appears to have genuinely unredacted material in it. Is a gigantic non-word searchable dump of PDFs, so it's slow going, but here's one example of previously released redacted document that I located and a new unredacted document. Oh yeah, the Hungarian Freedom Fighters were agency sponsored is the part that was unredacted. I don't think they would have inserted false material or whatever, but it remains to be seen if they have released / will release the really important stuff, e.g. the Angleton docs that Jefferson Morley has emphasized in his reporting. Holy cow, this guy found a sick one. James Angleton, Central Intelligence Agency official, is in charge of the Special Projects Unit located in the Foreign Intelligence Division of the CIA. During the past year, he has been very cooperative and has volunteered voluminous information of interest to the Bureau. At the present time, he more or less falls in the category of confidential informant. In order to handle his material in a more efficient and secure manner, it is being recommended that a control file be created. Section chiefs are also being alerted regarding the handling of information received from Angleton. In the previous ones, wait, where is the redacted version? Released June 2023, covers up Jay Lovestone bit, which is funnier because it's been known for like decades that Angleton was Jay Lovestone's handler. So Noah is like pouring through the data and looking at what was previously redacted and is now unredacted in this data dump. It is very much searchable text. Upload the Google Drive as Google Docs and download the document and upload to AI. Jefferson Morley says this morning at 8 a.m., I can't search these new JFK files. I hear you cry. Alas, the National Archives/Trump team failed to take the simple step of OCRing the released JFK files. But fear not, fellow researchers. The Mary Farrell Foundation is coming to your rescue. MFF will soon post searchable PDFs of all the new JFK files. In coming days, you can escape the clunky NARA site to go over to maryfarrell.org, the largest online archive of JFK records, to continue your research. Stay tuned for details. I know, like, this shit is bad, but I still read it and find it exciting. No, I don't think this is bad. I think it's not bad to understand how it's not bad to understand how the American government operates, especially the CIA. Like, I think the more informative stuff here is not to like arrive at a truth about who actually killed JFK. It's more so to get unrestricted, unfiltered access into how the CIA operated at the time and what they did. This is proof of a lot of the things that leftist tankies, whatever you want to fucking call it, will openly talk about in terms of like what the clandestine operations of the American State Department, the statecraft, looks like. This basically is just like proof of a lot of the things that they talk about, and they are the ones who oftentimes put the unredacted pieces of information together. Will this help me lose less on my poly market bets that are longer than the list of American war crimes? Here's Jefferson Morley. He's formerly of the Washington Post, author of The Ghost, The Secret Life of CIA Spy Master James Jesus Angleton. Jefferson Morley is at least according to NOAA, a trusted resource on JFK related information, so I trust him as well. He says, while we continue to look through the new JFK documents, a couple of observations. First, this is a breakthrough. The absurd and suspicious redaction that have denied us the full story are, for the most part, removed. We know why JFK wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the winds. Because as Arthur Schlesinger told him, the CIA was effectively usurping presidential authority. The agency censored Schlesinger's case for 6 decades to obfuscate the reality of CIA power. Schlesinger warned JFK that CIA encroachment on the traditional functions of the state undermined his ability to conduct his own foreign policy independent of CIA. No, this isn't a smoking gun, but that doesn't mean it's historically irrelevant. Far from it. Schlesinger's memo lays bare the origins of JFK's mistrust of the CIA, which continued for the rest of his presidency. Kennedy's suspicions were matched by CIA alienation from JFK's liberal policies. This was one cause of the assassination. So the way I explain it is like everyone basically knew that this was the case, but this offers like direct proof, if that makes sense. A ton of Israel/Mossad mentions in the JFK files about Angleton. Yeah, of course. JFK files reveal CIA Israeli intel pipeline. But once again, a thing that we know, right? A thing that we know that is well established, that everybody fucking talks about, but now there's more proof for it. This is not shocking or surprising. This is more so just additional proof for a thing that everybody understood was the reality. Yeah, the only continued redaction from the JFK documents has been, look. James Angleton's CIA underpart emanated from a liaison agreement which CIA maintained with the Israeli intelligence service and from other sources under the control of Angleton. Much of the information developed by Angleton was not disseminated within the CIA, but he felt that the data should be passed on to the Bureau. Alan Dulles gave him authorization to handle dissemination in this matter. We continue to receive information of value on a regular basis. Maybe the most damning, the CIA put contaminating agent in Cuban sugar headed for the Soviet Union. Also under the heading of old business. Wait. Oh, there it is. I remember the hue cry, especially in Carl Kazin in the White House when, bleep, this was initially redacted. Here it is, unredacted. Also under the heading of old business, I will remember the hue and cry raised, especially by Carl Kazin in the White House when the agency injected a contaminating agent in Cuban sugar bound for the Soviet Union. Shortly after the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was a disposition in Washington to re-examine the Bay of Pigs. And the fact that several Alabama National Air Guard officers lost their lives in the Bay of Pigs was surfaced, with surprisingly little excitement at the times. Can you explain why the CIA isn't what it used to be? Capitalism and shitification. It impacts all orifices and the organs of the state, as well as every other aspect of our lives. I genuinely think that. I think like the private-public partnership and the like funding being limited, I guess, even though they have expansive budgets, has definitely changed. Like they won, you know what I mean? They won the Cold War. Capitalism won, socialism lost. And in the process, I think year over year, the deregulation, the deregulatory aspects and the lack of interest in like, or the lack of appropriate avenues and targets for the CIA made it so that it was no longer as necessary, as needed in the minds of those who control at least the funding structure. It's not because everyone is more aware and connected in the present day. I don't think so. I mean, look at fucking Israel, dude. Everyone is incredibly connected to the crimes of Israel, many crimes of Israel, and yet people seemingly turn the other cheek and look the other way and still fucking call me a terrorist, for example, for accurately explaining. What Israel is doing. The CIA is a terrorist organization? Yeah, this video, isn't this the video?
This episode is brought to you by Nebula.
This is the video that got second thought, a visit from the Department of Homeland Security, no? In some ways, people were more informed in the 50s and 80s because journalism existed in a meaningful way. Maybe. Yeah, videos age restricted and also got unsurprisingly, this entire page was previously redacted. Turns out the FBI and CIA jointly bugged a fucking ambassador's office, and CIA panicked and shut it down when Hoover planned to tell the Senate that it was a CIA operation before asking to start it up again later. More CIA domestic contact service activity. 1,800 is quite a lot of businesses participating in the commercial cover program to backstop aliases from U.S. military and intelligence personnel. The U.S. didn't want to admit that it collected against friendly foreign countries and also concealed the existence of a program describing technical penetration of foreign diplomatic establishments, all the modern versions of which I'm assuming were blown by Snowden anyways. Intelligence coverage of friendly foreign countries, developing positive intelligence information regarding personnel. Anagram, penetration of foreign diplomatic establishments in the United States for procurement of cryptographic materials. So yeah, this is literally Edward Snowden shit. Remember when Edward Snowden blew the whistle on how much espionage the American intelligence agencies were engaging in for with our like against our foreign allies. This is they've been doing this, and we now know about it not because of the revelations in the document in the JFK documents, but we know about it because Edward Snowden blew the whistle on it. Continue from the previous memo. This doc was initially notable for confirming the existence of Proho, but in 2023, they still wanted to postpone releasing all the info about all technical collection programs against Soviets under a catch-all clause to protect national intelligence and defense interests. A 1973 memo from CIA's ORD, Office of Research and Development, that, as of 2023, withheld info about CIA and Bell, now known as AT&T, testing microwave technology to intercept domestic telecommunications. A lot of this stuff also is you know, it didn't go anywhere. That's the other thing. When you look at the conspiracy theories for too long, sometimes you end up falsely assuming that like MK Ultra was a massive success or whatever. You know what I mean? That like CIA's implementation of like hypnosis, for example, was successful. Like a lot of that stuff was not successful. Domestic tests for agency research and development efforts continued. This describes the CIA admitting to being able to basically covertly tap into most any U.S. telephone networks, landlines then, and also developing sensors and tech like FLIR, far-looking infrared, in the early 70s. This, I think, is part of the reason. I mean, from what I understand, the American infrastructure is still very fucking bad. Like telecommunications infrastructure is still very bad, that China was able to penetrate it with ease. There was a New York Times article on this a while back, like a couple months ago, where it turns out that the Chinese government and its espionage agencies had deeply penetrated American telecommunications and were directly looking at everything that people were saying. And the only reason why they were utilizing it was to figure out if their deep cover agents were under threat or not, so they can pull them out. Birds are real and they work for the government. Oh my God, someone show this to fucking, oh my God. Oh my God, hold on. Ain't nobody show this to Adapt. He's gonna lose his mind. Oh my God. Adapt was right. This was a previously redacted piece of information. Let's take a look. G. Trained birds. Birds have been trained and tested in the United States to carry small intelligence collecting packages such as audio surveillance devices, small cameras, and current measuring devices. Any data collected from unwitting domestic sources would have been used only for engineering purposes and then destroyed. Adapt! It's real! They have to redact this again. Yo, my apologies to Phase Adapt. Phase Up. He's been on this for a long time, dude. He's been talking about how birds have been used for espionage for quite a while now, and it turns out he was right. NSA participated and controlled most elements of the U.S. material. Oh, shocking. Redacted memo about intelligence coverage of diplomatic representatives of friendly foreign nations, with a particular warning to U.S. officials working closely with French, British, Israeli, and German intelligence officers. So this entire memo was redacted. Let's take a look. Intelligence coverage of diplomatic representatives of friendly foreign nations. As you are aware, at the present time, our coverage on the intelligence efforts of foreign countries here in the United States is primarily aimed at the activities of Soviet and communist bloc countries. This has been brought about by the fact that those countries represent the greatest threat to the security of our nation, both in the international and domestic fields. Notwithstanding the foregoing, a number of instances have been brought to our attention reflecting so-called friendly nations are engaging in direct intelligence activities against the United States. The case involving Joseph Sidney Peterson Jr., who was engaged in furnishing top-secret information from the National Security Agency to representatives of the Netherlands government, fully portrays the inherent danger in such intelligence activities. They were doing to us what only we get to do to them. See, now, this only goes in one direction. Only we get to spy on our foreign allies, our friendly foreign nations. our friendly foreign nations don't get to spy on us unless you're Israel, in which case you get to do whatever the fuck you want, okay? Which is part of the reason why I always say, like, half the CIA loves Israel and actively collaborates with Israel. The other half of the CIA fucking despises Israel and wants to stop the cross-pollination. That's, I think we all know which side won for quite a while now, actually. All right. It reaches another nation. Our security with respect to such information is only as good as the security of the foreign government. The purpose of this memorandum, therefore, is to alert you to the necessity of promptly bringing the Bureau's attention any information developed indicating representatives of foreign countries are engaged in intelligence activities here. Our basic policy is to conduct investigations only in instances where we receive allegations indicating an individual representing a foreign nation is engaging in activities in violation of our laws or otherwise constitutes a security menace. The Bureau is aware that the French, the British, the Israelis, the Germans, and a number of other nations either have regularly assigned intelligence representatives in the United States or, from time to time, send such representatives to the United States. In many instances, such representatives deal with the United States government agencies on an official basis. At the same time, it is possible that such representatives are engaged in other intelligence activities while here. We are requesting other government agencies who deal with intelligence representatives of foreign governments to keep us advised of the identities of foreign intelligence operatives in the United States. There it is. It apparently wasn't until 1955 that the FBI decided it should be spying on friendly nations. State Department had their own views on which country's staff should be targeted and surveilled first: Egypt, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, although it turned out Israel was already covered. Look, he stated that no coverage would be advisable at this time on such countries such as Greece, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, since the conditions in those countries are not, I guess, appropriate. In 1958, FBI was surveilling over a dozen Israeli nationals suspected of engaging in intelligence activities in Washington, D.C. and New York City, which was redacted previously. State Department told the FBI to proceed with caution when trying to develop informants within Israeli diplomatic establishments because most of the U.S. citizens hired by the Israelis are pro-Israeli in their thinking, i.e., watch out for double agents. Oh, no. The bottom said 9/11. Dude, what are you, fucking crazy? This is the JFK files. What are you talking about 9/11? If anything, they're talking about Chile. Potentially. Not 9/11 2001. They didn't. The American intelligence community did not become the architects of 9/11 in like the fucking 50s. Yeah. There's two 9/11s that American intelligence was to a certain degree involved with, you know? More evidence of U.S. CIA involvement in Sudan, Egypt, Syria, Yemen, and Libya. I know this is from 1959, but I'm honestly still pretty surprised it was released in its entirety. Ton of info about collecting against friendly nations. I guess the reason why they released the unredacted files is because most of the stuff is well established at this point, partially because as far as like the active collection of intelligence from foreign allies and not adversaries, but foreign allies specifically, was uncovered by Edward Snowden. So in that regard, they don't see any issue just openly releasing this stuff. I don't know. There's still information, I think, that you can derive out of this. This obviously specifically looks at like what the previously redacted, now unredacted files are. But as far as people claiming that this in and of itself is like irrelevant data, I disagree with you. I think that there is some worth in this information. Like, this is valuable information. It's important to now officially confirm previous assertions that were made through circumstantial evidence. This is now direct evidence. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so much you can do as far as developing a theory about clandestine activities of the CIA. But when they do deliver unredacted information like this, it basically solidifies those theories. It turns them into facts. It just creates confirmation. I don't think it's a smoke screen. Anyway. From a historian's perspective, you can only assume this stuff, but now as a factual fact is great for correcting misconception in academic sense. Sure. As far as like figuring out who did it, who done it, I don't think we know. I don't think we will ever. I doubt that until like the American regime is toppled in its entirety, will you ever, and even then, there's probably a contingency to burn all of those fucking files regardless. So, I doubt that we'll ever truly get this level of evidence on the who done it. This is an insane sequence of words that I did not understand could exist. Granny Hawktua was a CIA informant on the CPUSA, apparently. Jane Welsh. As the informant is aware, no connection between Lee Harvey Oswald and North Carolina branch of the Communist Party is known to exist. Actions before assassination consistent with previous behavior. Soviet connections recently sent memo denying any connection to Oswald to CPUSA governing committee. Opinion among membership divided on cause and justification of assassination. Party weapons appear to be accounted for with involvement neighboring vicinity of assassination. What? Withstanding neighboring vicinity of assassination? What does WI mean? Member Bleep, who previously served under Bleep, has been unaccounted for since February, although no reason to suspect involvement is currently known. The CIA or CPUSA party meetings at informant Falconry Ranch continue weekly as before assassination. No suspect. Subject is Jane Welsh, 23-year-old CPUSA operations board. I cannot believe that Hawktua's grandmother was a fucking CIA informant for the Communist Party of the USA. What the hell? So Hawktua is a psyop. Schizo's confirmed. Schizo's vindicated. Schizo's vindicated again. God damn. It's a joke, dude. Falconry Ranch equals Hawk. Yeah, I'm joking. I don't think this is real. But it's fun to entertain it. Hawktua girl's grandmother breaks silence and reveals one wish. Hawktua girl, whose real name is Haley Welsh, has posted a video on her Instagram account. The sweet montage set to Small Town Talk shows clips of the meme star doing her makeup in bedroom and stroking horses' muzzles. Close relationship with Granny Jane, who Haley appears to be devoted to. Speaking publicly for the first time, Granny Janey revealed her response to the viral meme. as well as her one wish when it comes to her granddaughter. Granny Janie said, "I don't know how to feel. It's crazy. I never thought anything like this could happen. It's too much to comprehend." She hopes her granddaughter will still stay near her for the rest of her life, stating, "I just want her to stay with me as long as I'm here." Internet sensation Hawk to a girl. How do we know this is like the same person? But this is so stupid. These people are so dumb. I mean, it's a meme. Granny Janie. Was she also Hawk-toing, spitting on that thing? Read the last line. What is the last line? She has been offered $600 to spit in a jar and send it over to... Man, y'all are dumb as fuck. This is a classic go back on the video moment. Like, you're so stupid, chat. Stop. God damn. Covering protests in Turkey today? I did already in the beginning. Go back in the VOD. Here, let's look at why the CIA is a terrorist organization.
The CIA, from the very beginning, at least as early as 1951, has used the information that it has collected, and it has used the information in order to penetrate and to manipulate the institutions of power in whatever country it is operating in order to influence the course of events in those countries. And essentially, this boils down to propping up those forces which are considered to be the friendly forces, and in penetrating, dividing, weakening, and ultimately destroying those forces which are considered to be the enemy forces.
Since its very inception as the Office of Strategic Services, the clandestine operations group known today as the Central Intelligence Agency has engaged in some of the worst atrocities in modern history. In this episode, we're going to take a brief look at some of the crimes of the CIA, and consider the possibility that maybe the good guys aren't so good after all.
The men and women of the Central Intelligence Agency. Without you, our nation's safety would be more vulnerable and our security fragile and endangered. The work you do each day is essential to the survival and to the spread of human freedom. You remain the eyes and ears of the free world. You are the tripwire over which the totalitarian rule must stumble in their quest for global domination.
As with every aspect of American life, the functions of the CIA are hailed as a way to protect freedom and democracy. Its agents are applauded as heroes. On the surface, the notion of gathering information to better understand the capabilities of other nations seems harmless enough. But as you probably already know, the CIA is not simply the ears of the nation. They're also instigators, propagandists, spies, saboteurs, torturers, and all too often, murderers. This is a huge topic, and one that I can't possibly fit into a short video, so I'll leave a bunch of links to other resources in the description. We're going to focus on some of the big picture stuff. Let's start with election meddling. According to US politicians, there's nothing more sacred than free and fair elections. We accuse other nations of meddling all the time. Recently, it's been Russia.
Unless the election results are one that we do not like. In which case, we absolutely will do everything in our fucking power.
Iran and China getting the accusatory finger pointed at them. But as much as we want to project an image of our nation as a shining beacon of truth and freedom, we are the worst offender when it comes to meddling in foreign affairs. And it's not even close. The CIA isn't a fan of subtle manipulation. The intelligence agency wants the world to see the results of whatever election or administration they're disrupting. What they don't want is for people to know they're the ones pulling the strings. According to one study, the CIA had engaged in 81 overt or covert interventions in foreign affairs between 1945 and 2000. And that's just the ones we know about, and not even counting the constant meddling and destabilization of the last 20 years. The CIA's weapon of choice for foreign meddling is the military coup. One of the earlier examples is the overthrow of the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran. Based on what you know about US priorities and the resources of the Middle East, what do you think was the catalyst for this coup? If you said oil...
Is this voice AI? Yes, dude, everything is AI. The artwork is AI. The voice is AI. I'm AI. You might also be AI. There's nothing real anymore. Everything is AI. I feel like Zoomers' brains are so fucking broken, dude. Oh my God. Every fucking video that we watch is like, is this AI? Is this AI? It's not. Jesus Christ.
Congratulations, you're right. The US beating up other countries for their oil isn't just a meme. Masada had nationalized the Iranian oil company, which negatively affected US and British economic interests. To make matters worse, from a US perspective, Masada, while not a communist himself, had earned the support of the Iranian Communist Party. As you'll come to see, one whiff of successful non-capitalist economics and the CIA is called in to destroy everything. In this particular instance, Winston Churchill and President Eisenhower decided to overthrow the government of Iran. The CIA paid some of Tehran's most violent mobsters to stage protests across the city, and orchestrated trucks and buses full of people to come in and seize the area. Between 200 and 300 people were killed in the conflict, which of course the CIA expected would happen. The intelligence agency then propped up a government under the rule of the Shah, who reigned as a monarch heavily dependent on US support to maintain power. Masada was arrested, convicted of treason by the new US-friendly government, served 3 years in prison, and spent the remainder of his life under house arrest, all for the crime of trying to lead his country out from under the boot of Western imperialism. The truth about this coup wouldn't come to light until 60 years later, in 2013, when CIA documents on the subject were declassified. These documents prove the CIA's planning and execution of the coup, their use of propaganda, bribery of politicians, security and military officials, and their approval at the highest levels of government. You may be thinking, okay, if they declassified this information, that means they don't do that kind of thing anymore, right? Well, no.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably, but it was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over. For example, in Europe, in 47, 48, 49, the Greeks and the Italians, we
don't do that now, though? We don't mess around in other people's elections,
only for a very good cause.
Can you do that? Do a Vine video on a former CIA director.
Only for a very good cause in the interests of democracy.
All right, thanks.
Laura Ingraham clearly gave this guy the chance to lie and say that we don't meddle anymore, but he didn't take it. The CIA director openly bragged about meddling in foreign affairs for, quote, very good reasons. Call me idealistic, but I don't think there's any reason for a country to disrupt the election process of other nations. But here we are. It's out in the open that we do it to this day. Here's another example of a CIA operative bragging about the types of crimes the agency commits.
We need to make the Iranians pay a price in Syria. We need to make the Russians pay a price. The other thing I would do...
We make them pay the price by killing Russians?
Yes.
And killing Iranians?
Yes. Covertly. So you don't tell the world about it, right? You don't stand up at the Pentagon and say, we did this, right? But you make sure they know it in Moscow and Tehran. Here's the other thing I want to do. I want to go after those things that Assad sees as his personal power base, right? I want to scare Assad. So I want to go after his presidential guard. I want to bomb his offices in the middle of the night.
Well, that happened about 2 years ago. As you remember, when his brother-in-law was...
I want to destroy his presidential aircraft on the ground. I want to destroy his presidential helicopters. I want to make him think we're coming after him, right?
These people aren't exactly subtle about the sabotage and violence committed by their organization. But let's return to the past for a minute. There are plenty more coups to discuss. Another study found that the US was responsible for no fewer than 61 attempts at regime change during the Cold War alone, all spearheaded by the CIA. Just 1 year after the overthrow of Masada, the CIA launched another coup to oust Jacobo Arbenz, the democratically elected president of Guatemala. This is the moment the CIA established itself as a weapon to be wielded by Western capital. The agency was approached by the United Fruit Company, a US-based corporation, because they were afraid new anti-exploitation laws in Guatemala would negatively affect their profits. The CIA also suspected Guatemala had ties to the USSR. And these two reasons were sufficient for them to launch a coup, oust the Guatemalan president, and install the first in a long line of right-wing dictators friendly to the US. This coup also set the precedent of the CIA lying to the president regarding casualties. So, by 1954, we had a largely unaccountable secret agency undermining democracy and national sovereignty around the world. This trend would continue throughout the decades. In 1963, the CIA planned a coup that culminated in the assassination of the president of South Vietnam, once again in the name of fighting communism. This particular coup resulted in US involvement in a foolish 10-year war, which cost the lives of 58,000 American soldiers and almost 1 million Vietnamese, many of whom were civilians. The CIA would go on to launch coups in Iraq, Cuba, the Republic of Congo, Laos, the Dominican Republic, Brazil, Chile, and countless other countries, each time with little reasoning besides, what you're doing isn't ideal for the US. These coups often led to horrible destabilization, including civil war, economic depressions, and hundreds of thousands of deaths. Over the course of their reign of terror, the CIA would develop techniques to aid them in the destruction of foreign nations. One such batch of techniques was compiled in a 90-page handbook titled Psychological Operations in Guerrilla Warfare, which was distributed to the US-backed Nicaraguan Contras, and detailed how armed propaganda teams could build political support in Nicaragua for the Contra cause through deceit, intimidation, violence, and assassination. This was a trend that would prove very useful to the US. By outsourcing their more heinous crimes, including over 50 assassination attempts on world leaders, to local US...
Yeah, how can I say America's bad when we've liberated so many people from communist dictatorship, dude? By actively liberating them from their lives. This is... I guess America's always outsourced the brutality when you think about it. And now we're just going to have concentration camps on the Mexican side of the southern border. Fantastic.
Friendly groups, the CIA could maintain a level of plausible deniability. Here's former CIA officer John Stockwell discussing his time in the agency and what their goals were.
They undertake to run operations in every corner of the globe. They also undertook the license of operating just totally above and beyond U.S. laws. They had a license, if you will, to kill, but also they took that to a license to smuggle drugs, a license to do all kinds of things to other people in other societies in violation of international law, our law, and every principle of nations working together for a healthier and more peaceful world. We manipulated and organized the overthrow of functioning constitutional democracies in other countries. We organized secret armies and directed them to fight in just about every continent in the world. We encouraged ethnic minorities to rise up and fight. People like the Mosquito Indians in Nicaragua, the Kurds in the Middle East, the Mongs in Southeast Asia. We have organized, and we still do, and fund death squads in countries around the world, like the Treasury Police in El Salvador, which are responsible for most of the killing of the 50,000 people just in the 80s, and there was 70,000 before that. And orchestration, CI, secret teams, and propaganda led us directly into the Korean War. We were attacking China from the islands Quemoy, Matsu, Thailand, Tibet. A lot of drug trafficking involved in this, by the way, until eventually we convinced ourselves to fight the Chinese in Korea, and we had the Korean War, and 1 million people were killed. Same thing for the Vietnam War, and we have extensive documentation of how the CIA was involved at every level, or the national security complex, because it's a very cooperative thing, into manipulating the nation into the Vietnam War. Let me just put it this way. The best heads that I coordinate with studying this thing, we count at least, minimum figure, 6 million people who've been killed in this long 40-year war that we've waged against the people of the Third World.
But funding coups and destabilizing entire regions takes a lot of money. Luckily for the CIA, their scope of work was broad enough to include a particularly lucrative industry, drug smuggling. At least as far back as the Vietnam War, CIA operatives were heavily involved in trafficking drugs into the United States. CIA planes would make routine trips to and from places like Costa Rica and Honduras, working with cartels to secure massive amounts of heroin and cocaine, which they would then shuttle back to the US and sell for a healthy profit. Because of their secretive line of work, these planes could land in places where normal customs regulations don't apply. It's a dream scenario for drug smuggling. The piles of money the CIA makes from this practice have directly funded the undermining of democracy throughout the world, with the added effect of introducing harmful drugs to the American population.
I mean, we would never do that now, right? Like, obviously, we would never We would never like invade a foreign nation and seize control over its poppy fields and keep it going. We would never do that. Accelerate opium production that suspiciously never made its way to America. Only the European market. Oddly enough.
Population. Drug running and coups are bad enough, but what really makes the CIA a terrorist organization is their fondness for bizarre, questionable, and sometimes downright evil experiments. Since the end of World War II, the intelligence agency has experimented with everything from chemical weapons to biological.
Yes, I'm talking about Afghanistan, but Afghan poppy never made its way. What the fuck is happening? This dog is panting like crazy. You okay? You got a big walk in, huh?
Biological weapons to mind control and death rays. The CIA is on a never-ending quest to find new ways to secretly kill or otherwise control their targets. You may have seen the movie The Manchurian.
Only 95% of European heroin comes from Afghanistan. Shit, my bad. I'm sorry. I apologize. My mistake.
Candidate. The film was based on the CIA's experimental mind control program, where a subject would be hypnotized and programmed with an activation word or phrase, something that, when heard, would trigger their CIA training and turn them into a sort of deadly automaton. The CIA wanted to create these sleeper agents and plant them in target countries around the world. It sounds absurd, but the Cold War was a scary time, and the CIA...
Yeah, you're right. Heroin in America has been Chinese, China white for years, brown shit from Mexico, but all the Afghan shit gets pushed elsewhere. Yeah.
Was a scary place. The secretive agency may have left the notion of mind control behind, but what they haven't given up is torture. Torture is something that no human being should be capable of doing to another, but it's part of the standard CIA toolkit, and it has been for years. This really only came to the attention of the American people during the Iraq War, when the horrific images from secret prisons and black sites like Abu Ghraib found their way onto US television screens. Waterboarding, sensory and sleep deprivation, dogs, insects, electrical shock. All of these and even more twisted techniques were used to get supposed criminals to confess, or get war prisoners to give up valuable information. For years, the gruesome details of America's so-called enhanced interrogation program were hidden from the public. Bits of information trickled out slowly over the course of the Iraq War and the years following. Now, nearly 2 decades after the CIA fabricated the intelligence that led us into war with Iraq, a fuller picture of the horrors of CIA black sites has been assembled. One prisoner, 49-year-old Abu Zubaydah, the first person to be subjected to the torture program approved by President George W. Bush, has provided drawings of what he experienced at a CIA black site in Thailand. Zubaydah, who was captured because the CIA mistakenly thought he was a top al-Qaeda lieutenant, describes waterboarding, which he endured 83 times, being crammed into a tiny confinement box meant to break his resolve, chained in so-called stress positions for hours. For example, his wrists being chained so high that he had to stand on tiptoes. He also depicts being hooded, chained in the fetal position, and tethered to a cell bar to prevent movement. He describes a process known as walling.
That's not true. The Taliban ended heroin within 6 months of taking over. Yeah, no, I know. I'm saying when America was in charge. I'm talking about, I'm saying that I was being sarcastic when I said America would surely never take over the heroin trade to continue funding their operations.
In which the prisoner has his head banged into a wall, and when he falls down, he's dragged back up to his feet by a plastic wrap.
Also, this is identical. Israel uses these torture methods as well in their prisons, their military detention facilities, where they put Palestinians on permanent detention without any evidence whatsoever.
Towel around his neck. Another drawing shows a larger confinement box, pitch black, with the prisoner chained in a seated position over a bucket which was meant to serve as a toilet. Zubaydah also describes being deprived of sleep for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, kept awake by having water thrown on him and being chained in painful positions. This is the legacy of the CIA during the Iraq War and for years after. cruel, inhumane torture, approved by the very highest authority in the country after the CIA fabricated the reasons for invading Iraq in the first place. Today, the CIA claims they no longer torture human beings. Instead, they're known to train non-Americans to do it for them, to maintain their plausible deniability. The CIA trains, observes, and provides equipment to foreign agents who are less constrained by public outcry. The torture continues, but now the CIA can claim that they're not the ones doing it. The question you're probably thinking is, why? Why would our country allow this organization?
This is part of it. Like, this is what I was saying. It's like outsourcing. We outsource everything. We've always outsourced shit, but like, I think part of the reason why CIA doesn't have the same motion it once did was because, like, when you outsource everything, you don't have the same level of control over all of your facilities, all of your capabilities. We've the definite, like, for-profit attitude has unironically eroded the CIA's capabilities now as well.
To exist. It clearly doesn't protect freedom and democracy like Reagan claimed. The answer is simple. The US wants to maintain its #1 spot.
Only 57% of Americans think it should be legal to protest Israel. Wait, what? What are you talking about? 12% say it should be illegal. This is the most, like, this is the biggest, like, non-issue of all time. Yeah. 57% say it should be legal. 31% are weirdly unsure. 12%, oh, my goat, Vincent Oceana. Newsflash, it is legal to protest. Move along, people. Yes, 30% of Americans are stupid. 12% of Americans that respond to this poll are fucking psychopaths. And 31% are stupid. Who cares? These numbers are not as bad as you think they are. Trust me. I know the depravity of the American population. Okay? I'm shocked.
We're currently the sole world superpower. And in order to maintain that position of power, the country needs to make sure that the rest of the world depends on us. And it needs to make an example of alternative economic structures that would undermine the notion of American capitalist supremacy. But don't just take it from me. Here's former CIA operative and whistleblower Philip A.G. talking about the U.S.
Aga baktım Türkiye'ye, konuştum. Abi konuştuk.
Relationship with Cuba and why we were so adamant in destroying them.
So it's not hopeless, but you see how the United States is going around in these areas of economics and of trade and of commerce and finance to try to make the Cuban people suffer as much as they can. And this is affecting, in a drastic way, very young children and infants, and also the older, in other words, the most vulnerable. And it is an eternal shame on the United States, in my opinion, that we would do such a thing to an entire country, just because we don't like the system, just because they won't come under our protection, basically. It's a kind of a mafia attitude, and it has been that way since Eisenhower.
Well, that's capitalism.
Well, it's also the United States, and our tradition of being very nervous when we don't control something. And when a country like Cuba slips out from under our control, after we had ruled it practically as a neo-colony or a protectorate for 59 years or so, then it makes people nervous because they know that if the Cubans are successful in their example of being able to provide, as a poor country, the best medical care in the third world to the whole population, because it's an inclusionary system. It's not like we have here, where you have this huge bulk of the population, you know, marginalized. But there, if everybody can have adequate medical care, if the schooling is adequate for all, and remember, Cuba has more doctors and more teachers per capita than any country in the world. And they have succeeded in these areas, and it's all state supported, which means people don't have to put money out for the medical care or for they of course pay the cost indirectly as a whole society, but they don't have to pay the bill in the hospital and so forth. And so that cannot be allowed to stand. It's a very bad example for the United States. So there's a very large mass of people out there who can look at Cuba and say, well, if they can do it, and on a per capita income of $2,000, $2,500 a year, where ours is $22,500 a year, what's wrong with our system? I mean, maybe we ought to consider an alternative.
That's why Nicaragua, Sandinista Nicaragua, had to be destroyed.
Exactly. They were a bad example, and that's why Grenada had to be destroyed, because any movement that comes to power with the idea of providing for all the people and of escaping the control of the United States and its economy, let's say the corporations and so forth, then that is bad news here in the United States in the upper circles of power.
So there you go. It really is that simple. The U.S. wants to maintain its global supremacy, and that requires destroying any competing economic system to prevent people from questioning capitalism. And
I can't think of a current nation that at least bills itself as a transitional socialist state that the American government is actively looking to attack relentlessly and is positioned as as the number one foreign adversary. I can't think of a single one. Certainly, all of the things that we say about our foreign adversaries, especially one that would bill itself as a transitional socialist state, would probably be true and valid, and you must hate them and you must fear them, and you must justify any and every action that we take against them.
Requires keeping the rest of the world under the boot of the...
Yeah, I'm talking about Canada. That's what I'm talking about. I was actually referencing the socialist transitional state of Canada.
United States. It's criminal and morally reprehensible, but who's going to stand up to the most powerful bully in the world? For those of you thinking that this doesn't matter because you live in the US, I've got bad news for you. In 1975, a U.S. intelligence committee found that the CIA owned more than 200 wire services, newspapers, magazines, and book publishers, and subsidized many more. A separate New York Times investigation revealed an additional 50 media operations run by the CIA, both within the U.S. and abroad, and another 12 publishing houses which had produced over 1,200 books secretly commissioned by the CIA. Okay, what does this mean? It means that the CIA has been running a secret propaganda campaign on American citizens for almost half a century. More recently, the agency has awarded contracts worth billions of dollars to Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, Amazon, and Google to complete assignments issued by the CIA. The Central Intelligence Agency has its tendrils in every single aspect of modern life: books, magazines, movies, television, social media, and big tech. Just as the CIA works hard to undermine freedom and
Johnny Harris.
democracy around the world, it also works hard to keep Americans convinced that they live in the greatest country on earth, and that there is...
I think after almost a century of successful Red Scare propaganda and the complete elimination of the USSR, I would say like these last couple of decades, I don't even think the CIA has to do this. I think they try to, and they do it in a very stupid way. I think Mossad tries to do it as well. Like when they'll do stuff like, what did those watermelon people ever do for black people during BLM? Like whenever I see someone talk about pro-Palestinian support as watermelon people, I'm like, okay, that's got to be an agent, you know? That's a federal agent that's writing that from behind an anonymous account. Like they do stuff like that, but it's kind of silly. And I don't think it works that much. But I mean, I'll give you an example, right? I'll give you an example from the Philippines. China offers Sinovacs to the Philippines in an effort to do some soft power. America needs the Philippines to despise China because America uses the Philippines to ensure that China does not get to stabilize the South China Sea. The Filipino government is the last government that refuses to engage in mutual security cooperations with China. That's why you hear stories about like Filipino boats getting getting hit with water cannons from like the Chinese Coast Guard, right? That is happening while China is trying to create a security cooperation agreement that it successfully implemented or successfully got on board with every other country in the South China Sea, with the exception of the Philippines. So China, in an effort to do soft power initiatives and show goodwill, offers Sinovacs to the Philippines. What does the American government do? They engage in a covert bot attack, basically, on Filipino social media to try and create fear amongst the population against Chinese vaccines. They run an anti-vax campaign. This was all revealed in a Reuters article that we've shown on numerous occasions. Okay, so they created vaccine hesitancy. They created vaccine hesitancy in the Philippines in an effort to stop them from using and mistrusting the Chinese vaccine that was sent. Instead of sending, Western vaccines to the Philippines, that's what they chose to do. And this was fairly consequential. So it's not that the American government doesn't engage in initiatives like this, right? They still do. They still engage in initiatives like this one. Here it is. This is the Reuters article. Pentagon ran a secret anti-vax campaign to undermine China during the pandemic. If you want to learn more about it, I've read this article multiple times at this point, so I'm not going to do it again. But they used to, and they still do it. But I don't think it's. I don't think every single person that you see on your timeline that's saying like insanely stupid things is actively being paid by the federal government. I think that there are a lot of people that simply want to sound smart, and they are carrying the tradition of wrecker behavior all on their own, without any sort of federal government subsidy, without any sort of paycheck or pay stub from the FBI or the CIA. They're just doing it on their own because they're fucking stupid. Part of the reason why they're doing it on their own because they're fucking stupid is because American education is completely collapsed. There's no critical thinking skills, and social conditioning is so firmly set and so firmly anti-communist, anti-socialist in this country that they don't even need to do it. Like, they can just get it for free.
There's no alternative to American supremacy. The CIA is a terrorist organization, the biggest one in the world, and it needs to be abolished and its records made public. The United States has no right to impose its will on the rest of the world, and it certainly has no right to do it in secret.
Anyway. I tell people that Americans have been lobotomized. Yeah. Every American at birth, myself included, gets immediate government mandated lobotomy. Otherwise, it makes no sense that these would be the outcomes. Yeah, that video that we just watched got a Department of Homeland Security visit for JT. Second thought. That's a second thought video. And JT literally got a Department of Homeland Security visit after that video. It's also been completely blacklisted on YouTube despite having 700,000 views. Not true. Wait, wasn't it that video that got him the visit? Was it another video? I'm pretty sure it was a different video. I thought it was that one. Which one was it? I need to find the tweet. Go find the tweet and then send it to me. CIA fell off as a self-perpetuating machine now. I think there's some truth to the American psychosis being self-perpetuating, but these ideas aren't just occurring spontaneously. They absolutely still have an insane amount of influence in the rhetoric and propaganda that floats around, even in a lot of progressive spaces. I think that they do have influence, but it's like the same principle behind manufacturing consent. Yeah, it is. I was right. It's the CIA video, no? Yeah, this is going to be an important thread. This thread was prompted by YouTube shadow ban in my new video. Yesterday morning, I released, a video titled CIA is a terrorist organization. Unsurprisingly, it was instantly demonetized. Fine, I'm used to that. After the video went live, I got the usual comments. Clicked as soon as I saw the notification. Views were slightly disappointing, but par for the course for a demonetized video. The video no longer appeared in the subscription feed. Wait, what? This was an obvious lie, and an insulting one at that. Remember that video was only age-gated. Why wouldn't my video on the CIA, which did not show any explicit violence, receive a harsher treatment? YouTube is notorious. The fact that the video went live received notifications. No, the CIA is a terrorist organization. Am I wrong? Look at the tweet right above. That video earned me a visit from the DHS who asked me about anti-American sentiment in my videos. A few months ago, I uploaded... Oh, you're right. Okay, my bad. My bad. You're right. I uploaded a video on police brutality that showed explicit acts of violence by the police, and it was understandably age-gated. The video was appropriate only for older audiences, but did not break any of YouTube's terms and conditions. That video earned me a visit from the Department of Homeland Security, who asked me about anti-American sentiment in my videos. That was the first time I realized, wow, I guess people really are monitoring what we say and are willing to try and intimidate us. Shit, my bad. It was not the CIA terrorist video. It was a police brutality video that he put out. Thank you for clearing the record. Thank you. By the way, you should read this. Is going off the same intelligence agency thread of thoughts also important? Well, have you gotten visits from the Department of Homeland Security before? Do you think I would reveal this information? Are you insane? I will not confirm nor deny anything. All right. This is huge. Priscilla Johnson McMillan interviewed Lee Harvey Oswald in the Soviet Union in 1959. She played a key role in shaping public perceptions of Lee Harvey Oswald as mentally unstable lone wolf communist after JFK's assassination, but her role in the cover-up went a lot deeper. In September 1964, the Warren Commission was desperately trying to square the circle on Lee Harvey Oswald being in two places at once, Mexico City and Cuban exile, Sylvia Odio's home in Dallas, Texas. The Mexico trip in and of itself is deeply suspect. Warren Commissioner Senator Richard Russell disbelieved the single bullet bullshit and that Lee Harvey Oswald had gone to Mexico. So Priscilla miraculously found a bus ticket stub showing Lee traveled there while interviewing his wife Marina at home. More here. Then in 1967, Stalin's daughter defected to the U.S. with CIA help. Upon arrival, she stayed in Priscilla's grandfather's home while Priscilla helped her write an autobiography. JFK researchers have suspected she was CIA for decades. That has now been confirmed. Appears to be a new file on CIA's witting collaborator and Marina Oswald friend and biographer, Priscilla Johnson McMillan. Looks like she was very active going back to 1958. What? Why would you not have been visited? I mean, come on. You had a teenage leader of the terrorist Houthis on your stream who took out 100... Why would you not have been visited? I mean, come on. You had the teenage leader of the terrorist Houthis on stream who took out 100 U.S. ships and mass murdered Jews. I know you're joking, except there are people who legitimately think this. I understood that you were joking, except there are people who literally think that. There are people who actually think this. Yeah. Also, you know, the funny thing about the Houthis is that it's a family. like the Ansar Allah movement is primarily led by the Houthis, who you can tell if they're Houthi or not because it's their fucking last name. So that's why it's very funny when people are like, dude, you just don't know. This guy's a fucking Houthi. Yeah, if his name would literally be Al Houthi if he was a fucking Houthi. Anyway, that's besides the point. It's very stupid. It's very annoying, but who cares? I can't believe you're laughing at someone that personally murdered 5,000 U.S. troops. No, how about 5 million, dude? 5,000. He killed 5 million U.S. troops. He has a devil fruit, big dog. What do you mean? Words used to mean something. Power scaling used to mean something. And now you got Tim Houthi, Charlemagne, so OP. So OP that he's wreaking havoc over the Red Sea with his devil fruit powers, and no one cares. No one cares about it. Yeah, the leader is Abdul Malik al-Houthi. Yeah, you know how all the people that have D's in their middle names, like it's kind of like that. All the people that are Houthis have Houthi in their last name. Yeah, he got the hockey and the devil fruit. Abi coverladın mı İmamoğlu'nu? Yes, coverladım. Sabah ilk iş. This appears to be the nose of a HSCA staffer who's reviewing CI documents on PGM. It would be nice if we actually had access to those original files. Actually, this file was previously released with a few redactions, such as the case officer's name and various sources and operations name. Where were we? Yeah, we dove into the JFK stuff. I don't know if there's like a good YouTube video. I guess like one of the best JFK coverage, like one of the best like conspiratorial JFK videos you can watch is what's face Oliver Stone. It's not a documentary, but it's a fucking, the JFK movie is pretty good. There's also he covers it in his what is it, People's History? Wasn't that the other one? People's History, like the revamping of the Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States as a documentary, like a docuseries. Wendy does a really good ass theory vid. I proved the JFK conspiracy with a whiteboard. Nah.
On Friday, November 22nd.
What is this? 2 years ago from Sean Munger. Oswald acted alone. JFK assassination solved. Part 1 of 2. The Sean Munger video confirms the previously established government narrative then. That's not what I was looking for. What I was looking for is something different. There's a video that goes into the Foster Dulles angle that I found compelling. GDF has a video on it. What is this video? What is his video on it? Is it the why America really supports Israel? Because I'm going to be a little suspicious on that. I have seen some stuff from GDF that has like rubbed me a little bit in the wrong way. And I used to be a big fan, as you guys know. What I don't understand is that you call Jackson a Fed and make up conspiracies about him. All I'm saying is, first of all, much respect to the Jackson Hinkle heads. Okay. That's number one. Big respect, big ups. You guys are the true loyalists. You are definitely. I respect it. I respect the Jackson Hinkle heads, especially at this stage, you know? All I'm saying is, I find it rather odd that he is a MAGA communist linked up with Tulsi Gabbard, who literally did PSYOPs. Also is a Fed. And he can freely travel to fucking Russian-occupied Ukrainian territory, Venezuela, and the fucking Hassan Nasrallah funeral. Freely. Establishing communications with all matter of anti-American influencers and people that are declared foreign adversaries, even sometimes on like the terror watch list, and freely roam in the United States of America. Deport his ass? No. I'm not. I'm not advocating for that at all. I'm simply stating that I find it interesting that he does not.
In 1956,
he does not get. What is this? This is an unlisted link. This video that you sent me is unlisted. Eyes Wide Open. Oh, I've heard about this. This is a channel I've heard about with 138,000 subscribers. Bush the Father Chapter 1. God damn, this channel is popping, dude. Holy shit. Whoa. Whoa, look at all these. This is like a treasure trove, dude. This is a treasure trove. Does he have anything on JFK? I mean, I'm sure he has something on JFK, but like directly on JFK. Whoa. Incredible. Maybe this? Maybe this would be. GDF got called anti-Semite by Empanada for placing more blame on the Israel lobby than oil for the invasion of Iraq, but Empanada isn't American and just wasn't aware of the actual pressure AIPAC actually holds on individual politicians. Empanada sees American empire from the outside, so his perspective was just underinformed. What is it that you think is problematic with the GDF? First of all, I think GDF himself might not be American either. I don't know. It's just something doesn't smell right. I'm not saying he's bad. I just think that there is just something that didn't sit right with me. There's a lot of great videos on GDF's channel. We watched it a lot. I was a early supporter, big time. The video is just describing the Israel lobby by Mersheimer and Stephen M. Walt. It was literally published by Harvard University Press. It's absolutely crazy to claim the GDF video on the book is sus at all, to be honest. Bad Empanada's wrong on that. I haven't seen Bad Empanada's takes on it. My point is, the moment that somebody starts venturing into like Israel controls America territory, I get a little suspicious. Because it's not the case. Not only is it not the case, like, does Israel have an insane amount of influence over American domestic affairs? Yeah, no shit. It's fucking 36 states where it's illegal to protest against Israel, okay? Of course it does. But the moment that you start talking about like Israel controls America, or start doing like Zog shit, you know, Zionist occupied government, which is a fucking 4chan meme initially, like the moment that you reverse the trajectory or reverse the power dynamic and act like it's you know, a monolithic force that ends up controlling the entirety of the American government, and not a relationship that's born out of like mutual desires of controlling the region, is the moment where I get like a little sussed out. He has recent videos of the Warsaw Uprising and the Nazis, and comments are full of Nazis crying about how he changed. He didn't. No. But I do think that he had a fuck ton of anti-Semitic anti-Semitic comments under his videos. It was frustrating. Resending this one time, GDF buys into Israel influence on the U.S. over U.S. having genuine interests of his own a bit too much. I think there's still some use for GDF, but he should be taken with a grain of salt. Yes, there was interdepartment conflict on Israel and a lack of cohesion in the past, as there was on almost everything, but that isn't to say that Israel lobby is what changed this. Anyway, let's I'll watch the Did the CIA Kill Kennedy video from GDF.
Gamal Abdel.
But I just wanted to tell you, like, I was a little disturbed when I saw some comments from his chat, for sure. Like, not his own community. He can't control all the fucking comments, but
Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal Company, prompting an invasion by Israel, France, and Britain. Over in Washington, D.C., a dinner party was being held at Walter Lippmann's house, attended by many of the Washington elite, including CIA Director Allen Dulles. The conversation turned to Nasser when one of the guests jokingly opined, "Allen, can't you find an assassin?" But Allen Dulles responded in all seriousness. While smoking his pipe, he replied, "Well, first you would need a fanatic, a man who'd be willing to kill himself if he were caught, and he couldn't be an outsider. It would be very difficult to find just the right man." What if I told you that Lee Harvey Oswald, the man charged with John F. Kennedy's murder, had no motive to kill him? George de Mohrenschildt, Oswald's dear friend and CIA handler, testified to the Warren Commission that Oswald...
What is the what do you call it? Why is this video unlisted? It's so sad to see GDF's host was found dead 100 miles away from his home after falling back into a knife 7 times.
was jealous of Kennedy's wealth, success, and his beautiful wife. But he later published a book in which he recanted all those damning statements that helped frame Oswald as the killer. Lee was not jealous. He was an admirer of President Kennedy. But one man in Washington had all the motivation in the world to kill Kennedy, and he had all the means to do so. It was the same man who orchestrated MK-Ultra, the CIA's mind control and psychological torture program, the same man who orchestrated coups in Guatemala and Iran, and the assassination of Patricia.
So in 36 states, it's illegal to boycott Israel, but not illegal to protest it, right? It's not even like directly illegal in the sense that like you will go to jail for it, But in the proper way to address it would be to say, in 36 states in the United States of America, there are numerous legal pathways, legal hurdles presented against developing or implementing a boycott, divestments, and sanctions movement on Israel. This could mean, for example, having to sign a piece of paper that says you will never engage in any sort of anti-Israeli activity or demonstrate anti-Israeli sentiment in a state like Texas, for example, if you want to retain gainful employment. You know, stuff like that. It is also obviously it's a violation of the First Amendment, but it still exists.
Lumumba. He'd also launched the Bay of Pigs invasion, which very well may have led him to conducting an assassination of another head of state on American soil. This is the story of Allen Dulles.
Yeah, React channels, don't upload my reaction to this video. It's an unlisted video. I don't know exactly what the reason is for why it's unlisted. So don't upload it. I will fucking take it down.
I hate my husband. I hate my husband. I hate my husband. Oh, how I hate my husband. I want to kill him. I will be like a fighting cock with knives on my talons. I will cut him in ribbons with sharp knives. I will cut him in the back. I will even perhaps cut his throat with a sharp knife tied to my talons when I am a bloody, murderous fighting cock. That's Clover Todd Dulles, Allen Dulles' wife. As you may imagine, Dulles didn't exactly treat women with the utmost tenderness and compassion. His sister Eleanor claims he'd had at least 100 affairs. During World War I, when Dulles was working as a diplomat in Switzerland, he began an affair with a young Czech woman in the U.S. legation office. When British intelligence told him that she was actually a double agent working for the Germans, Dulles took her out to dinner, then took her on an evening stroll along the cobblestone streets, right into the arms of British intelligence. She was never seen again. Dulles had quite the capacity for cruelty. He showed a coldness and lack of empathy for others from a young age. Eleanor Dulles, his sister, described an incident at their family's summer getaway in Watertown, New York. When Allen, who was 9 at the time, watched his 5-year-old sister Nataline fall into a lake. She was flailing and unable to rescue herself, and he just stood there and watched, even though he was a strong swimmer. His mother had to run out from inside the house to save her. This cold detachment from others would serve him well into his adulthood, as it allowed him to work with the most unsavory of characters, including fascists and war criminals. Allen and his brother, the future Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, would run Sullivan and Cromwell, the corporate law firm in New York. Their clients included Germany's Krupp Steel and IG Farben, which produced the Zyklon B poison used in concentration camps during World War II. They also made extensive use of slave labor. The Dulles brothers would go to great lengths to keep these nasty secrets from coming to surface. Shredding of captured Nazi records was the favorite tactic of Dulles and his associates. At the war's end, Allen Dulles would secure the escape of untold numbers of Nazi war criminals while he served as chief of station at the OSS Bern office. In April 1945,
Allen Dulles is a true demon, a real one.
Dulles personally snuck SS General Karl Wolff and Colonel Walter Rauff to freedom as part of Operation Sunrise. Rauff was the one who created the Black Raven gas vans that killed as many as 250,000 people on the Eastern Front. These vans would be the precursor to the gas chambers. After being put up in an apartment in Rome by the U.S. Strategic Services Unit, Rauff escaped and winded up in Chile, where he became an advisor to Pinochet's secret police. That apartment in Rome would hold numerous Nazi war criminals. There they were protected from army Nazi hunters. Back in Washington, Dulles helped create the State Department's Office of Policy Coordination, which would be headed by Frank Wisner. There they'd use millions of dollars in stolen Nazi loot to fund anti-communist operations, as well as skimming from the Marshall Plan Fund. They would employ Nazis and Nazi collaborators for propaganda and covert operations, numbering...
Okay, but to be fair, if your enemy now is communist, who's the best at killing communists? The remaining Nazis that were not punished. So you gotta align with them, you know? Come on, guys. I mean, that's the big bad, right? Communism is the big bad. You gotta go with the anti-communists. Who are the anti-communists with like combat experience? Oh, that's right, fucking Nazis. And there you have the invention of NATO.
In the tens of thousands. The Dulles brothers leveraged their powerful corporate positions to insert themselves deep into Republican politics. They provided one of their own attorneys to run Dwight D. Eisenhower's presidential campaign, and apparently tapped Richard Nixon to be his running mate. Allen used his position at CIA to good use, digging up dirt on Democratic candidates and funneling money through front groups to the Eisenhower-Nixon campaign. Allen and Foster earned Eisenhower's good graces, and they were generously rewarded. Foster would rule the diplomatic arm of the federal government at U.S. State, and Allen became the Director of Central Intelligence. That year was 1953, and Mohammad Mossadegh of Iran would nationalize the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. What followed was the plot to overthrow him. After a crippling economic blockade, the CIA paid agents to create large angry mobs, which stormed the Prime Minister's residence. Rebel forces rolled 24 tanks alongside them, and fired an artillery shell into the residence. Mossadegh barely made it out alive by scaling a fence. Mohammad Reza Shah would take his place, and with the help of the CIA,
Yeah. Another amazing footnote of American democratic initiatives is actively undermining the democratically elected leadership and putting in place our guy who happens to be a fucking monarch, also incredible torturer, like just crazy amounts of torture. Petition to skip this video. Wait, why?
they'd create a security apparatus that tortured thousands of people. The next year came the toppling of another government, this time in Central America. Before 1950, the United Fruit Company owned nearly every mile of railway in Guatemala, along with the entire telephone system and the only port on the Atlantic coast. It was also the single largest landowner in the country. A new nationalist president named Jacobo Arbenz promised to repatriate some of this splendor with a bill that expropriated land that wasn't under cultivation. He also offered compensation for the loss, but Arbenz had gravely underestimated the wrath that would follow. CIA pilots rained bombs down on Guatemala City, and the president fled fearing for his life. The US had installed a colonel by the name of Carlos Castillo Armas, turning Guatemala from a democracy into a military dictatorship. In one of the most violent examples of US regime change, the CIA provided military officers with killing manuals, or more specifically, CIA handbooks on how to carry out political assassinations. They even provided a so-called disposal list of 58 targets to be liquidated. That list grew to more.
He yaps and conjectures a lot for a video with no sources, paints a vivid picture, but this ain't journalism or historical analysis. I'm pretty sure he does actually fucking. He usually does present his sources. I guess he did it. Maybe that's why he unlisted this video. But I haven't seen anything. Everything that he brought up so far is well documented. He has not said anything that's even like remotely weird or off color in this video at all. Like virtually everything that he has said so far is not even, you could say it's like a little bit reductive, or maybe it doesn't like cover everything because he's just like kind of going over it. But yeah, none of this is like weird or new information.
More than 70,000 people, or 10% of the adult population of Guatemala. The violence and genocide of the native population that followed would kill hundreds of thousands. Meanwhile, another covert operation was taking place at home. The Cold War had ushered in a new kind of technological race, the race for control of the human brain. The CIA would utilize university professors, doctors, and scientists at dozens of institutions to study brainwashing and psychological coercion, or more accurately, psychological torture. Expanding on the previously named Operation Artichoke, the program would take on a new name, MK Ultra. Subjects for this human experimentation were the most vulnerable, including prisoners at CIA black sites, who suffered drug-induced psychosis and even death. Others were found in the halls of hospitals and mental asylums. Without their consent, the sick and the mentally ill were fed mind-altering drugs, such as high doses of LSD and methamphetamine. They would be kept in solitary confinement for days or even weeks. Allen Dulles' depravity knew no bounds, as even his own son wasn't spared. He sanctioned CIA doctors from the MK Ultra program to conduct experiments on Allen Dulles Jr., who had suffered a brain injury in the Korean War. These experiments included insulin shock therapy, intentionally overdosing Allen Jr. with insulin, causing violent convulsions and excruciating pain.
Did the current news dry out? No. This is directly related to current news. I do genuinely despise people that come in here and have this like incredibly fucking like weird I own the road, I own the show attitude when they come in here and they're like, I don't like what you're watching. What happened? The fucking current news riot is literally the question of the video is, did the CIA kill Kennedy? One of the top news stories of the fucking day is the JFK assassination files being being released without previous fucking redactions. Shut the fuck up. God damn. So many motherfuckers are unbearable.
He told his sister Joan, "Can't you do something for me? I'm going mad." In April of 1959, Allen's brother, John Foster Dulles, would die of an aggressive colon cancer. The Dulles brothers as a pair were no more, and it fell on Allen to carry on their legacy. With Eisenhower's second term coming to a close, the race was on to secure a seat in the new administration. He'd played both sides of the 1960 presidential campaign, feeding intelligence to Richard Nixon and Democratic candidate John F. Kennedy. Kennedy would of course win by a razor-thin margin, and to appease the Republicans still in the federal government, he'd keep two Republican bigwigs. J. Edgar Hoover would remain at FBI, and Allen Dulles would remain the Director of Central Intelligence. As usual, Allen Dulles' clever political maneuvering would pay off. Dulles would undermine Kennedy's foreign policy immediately. Actually, before he even got into office, Dulles was conspiring with the Belgians to overthrow the democratically elected government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Dulles' CIA would provide intelligence and material support to the military, particularly those loyal to future despot Joseph Mobutu. The newly elected post-colonial leader, Patrice Lumumba, would be put into quite an unlucky position, driven out of Kinshasa and running for his life. He'd be chased down with the help of the CIA and Belgian intelligence. Agency assets would savagely beat Lumumba and his family, even his 1-year-old son. They'd then kill Lumumba in cold blood. Kennedy wouldn't find out for a month after the killing. You see, Kennedy's politics were too disparate from the old Republican Guard, who still had a strong hold on the Pentagon, the CIA, even the White House. And the establishment soon came to resent him, even hate him for it. Years after Kennedy's death, H.R. Haldeman, aka Bob Haldeman, was the chief of staff for the Nixon White House. Haldeman is best known for his role in the Watergate scandal, as he was actually convicted on conspiracy, perjury, and obstruction of justice charges. But a less well-known fact of his life adds some interesting insight into the fate of President John F. Kennedy.
This was
in his
also
post-Watergate
covered in the
book titled The Ends of Power, Haldeman describes conversations with Nixon, his boss, which were all recorded in what are now known as the Watergate tapes. In these tapes, Nixon is heard covering his tracks and trying to keep his team of CIA conspirators from talking, including Howard Hunt, the ringleader of the Watergate burglars. Nixon is famously heard offering $1 million in cash to shut them up. But Nixon is very clear on keeping Howard Hunt quiet specifically, based on his long history with the CIA. Hunt had overseen the Guatemala coup and other covert operations, like the Bay of Pigs fiasco. Hunt will uncover a lot of things. You open that scab, there's a hell of a lot of things. This is going to open up that whole Bay of Pigs thing, and it's going to make the CIA look bad. It's going to make Hunt look bad, and is likely to blow the whole Bay of Pigs thing. And we think it would be very unfortunate for the CIA and for the country at this time. Bob Haldeman would later clarify these remarks in his memoir. It seems that in all those references to the Bay of Pigs, he was actually referring to the Kennedy assassination. The Bay of Pigs invasion was launched on April 17, 1961. Over 1,400 CIA-trained Cuban exiles approached the island from the ocean in what has since been called an extraordinarily disorganized and poorly planned operation. Most of the fighters would be killed or captured, but we now know that the plan was flawed from the beginning, on purpose. The military and CIA wanted to use the failed Bay of Pigs fiasco to usher in a full military invasion of Cuba. The chief of naval operations, Admiral Arleigh Burke, even took the liberty of going...
Bro. The CIA at the time was wilding out. There was a plan to fucking do a 9/11 in Miami and then blame it on Cuba. They literally had actively a plan to blow up Florida and then blame it on Cuban revolutionaries so they could go to war with Cuba. Like, it is crazy. This is the peak, I would say. Like, around this time was when they were really popping.
Behind Kennedy's back to position naval destroyers with Marine battalions off the shores of Cuba, anticipating that U.S. forces might be ordered into Cuba to salvage a botched invasion. They also hoped that Kennedy would assist the plan further with air support. Kennedy said no to all of it. Leaving the work of the CIA to speak for itself, the Bay of Pigs invasion was nothing but a monumental failure that fell right onto Allen Dulles' lap. After the failed invasion, Kennedy went on the attack. Rumors started spreading in the agency that the president was going to commence a reduction in force, codenamed the 701 program.
The famous line comes from here when he says, I want to tear the CIA piece by piece and blow it into different directions with the wind or whatever.
Roughly 1 in 5 employees would end up being canned. And then there was the man at the top, Allen Dulles, who was forced into retirement. Allen Dulles had been crossed, and this wasn't a man that let anyone get away with that. Kennedy quickly became extraordinarily unpopular. No, hated by the top Republican brass at the Pentagon, the agency, and the White House. Daniel Ellsberg, who later became famous for leaking the Pentagon Papers, describes the atmosphere at the time. There was virtually a coup atmosphere in Pentagon circles. Not that I had the fear that there was about to be a coup. I just thought it was a mood of hatred and rage. The atmosphere was poisonous. Poisonous. It was 2003, and Howard Hunt, the agency man and Watergate conspirator, was essentially on his deathbed. He was 84, and his long-estranged son, St. John, wanted him to open up about his endeavors as a spy before he left this earth. St. John never believed his father's story of where he was on the day of Kennedy's death. Howard had testified to Congress that he was in Washington, but Dorothy, St. John's mother, contradicted that story and told him he was actually in Dallas. After prodding his father for the story for years and writing him a long, pleading letter, Howard finally obliged, and his son flew to South Florida to see him in what would be his last conversations with his father. Hunt explained to his son that in 1963, he had been invited to a clandestine meeting attended by numerous CIA agents connected to the anti-Castro movement. These included future Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis and CIA assassin David Morales. Morales was the chief of operations at the largest CIA station in Miami called JM Wave. They were all gathered to discuss an operation, but it quickly became clear to Hunt that this operation was the assassination of the president.
Yeah, okay.
According to Hunt, Morales and Sturgis referred to the president's killing as the big event.
I mean, look, it lays out, to a certain degree, major reasons as to why the CIA would want to assassinate him, which I understand. But, like, if the pivotal piece of information is a deathbed confession, like, of a secondhand, like a deathbed confession coming from a former guy, not exactly the smoking gun. Well, I don't know enough. I don't know anything.
Event. Morales told Hunt that he had been picked for the operation by Bill Harvey, a CIA man who oversaw the many assassination plots against Fidel Castro. He'd also serve as chief of station in Rome. According to his Rome deputy, Wyatt, when the news broke about Kennedy's death, Bill Harvey's reaction indicated that he had prior knowledge. Harvey has long been suspected of playing a role in the killing, and according to Wyatt, Harvey traveled to Dallas in November of 1963. The Kennedy assassination would be investigated yet again by the House of Representatives from 1976 to 1978. According to the committee's prosecutor, Dan Hardway, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that Harvey was in Dallas in November 1963. We considered Harvey to be one of our prime suspects from the very start. He had all the key connections, to organized crime, to the CIA station in Miami where the plots against Castro were run, to other prime CIA suspects like David Phillips. We tried to get Harvey's travel vouchers and security file from the CIA, but they always blocked us. But we did come across a lot of memos that suggested he was traveling a lot in the months leading up to the assassination. What Hunt described to his son was a plan that was overseen by Bill Harvey and David Morales, contracting sharpshooters from the Corsican underworld, who had a long history with the CIA. 10 years later, in 1973, after an evening of heavy drinking, Morales would let slip what happened to his attorney. We took care of that son of a bitch, didn't we? Lee Harvey Oswald, the man accused of Kennedy's assassination, is now known to have been an asset for American intelligence agencies. Upon his arrest, Oswald attempted to call a military intelligence officer in Raleigh, North Carolina. He was probably calling his cutout. He was calling somebody who could put him in touch with his case officer. Prior to the assassination, Oswald was the subject of secret intelligence reports at CIA, FBI, State Department, and the Office of Naval Intelligence. Everywhere you look with him, there are the fingerprints of intelligence. After Kennedy's death, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover immediately pulled CIA surveillance tapes of phone calls supposedly made by Oswald. It quickly became clear that the voice on the tapes was not Oswald's. They were an impersonator, calling the Cuban and Soviet embassies in Mexico. Hoover informed Kennedy's successor, Lyndon Johnson, who was stunned by this fact, since it revealed that Oswald was deeply involved in espionage activities. Lee was also being groomed by George de Mohrenschildt, the man from the beginning of the story who recanted his testimony. Mohrenschildt's spy handler was Colonel Lawrence Orloff, a CIA informant who was a partner of J. Walton Moore, the CIA's station chief in Dallas. But here's perhaps one of the most damning pieces of evidence. In September of 1963, Oswald was spotted in Dallas by Cuban exile leader and
What's happening? Do we have a... What is going on? Hinkle Hoopers, you triggered every dumbass MAGA communist. Now they're up your ass. Respect to the ACP heads.
Antonio Veciana. What makes this sighting so spectacular is that Oswald was accompanied by David Atlee Phillips, a CIA legend and a major player in Latin American intelligence operations. He would later be investigated for his role in the assassination by the 1976 House Committee. This gave much further weight to his close ties with American intelligence agencies. So, was Oswald the CIA shooter? Well, there are serious issues with the evidence. We need only look directly from the Warren Committee.
I think it's pretty funny that all the Jackson Hinkle heads are coming in here right now and yelling about me suspecting him of maybe being potentially a federal agent, as we are literally looking at a guy historically who was declared sympathetic to socialist causes and assassinated JFK for that reason, when in fact he was quite literally a naval intelligence officer and actively worked with pro-Fidel Castro, pro-Cuban Revolution movements in an effort to establish himself as a revolutionary figure in America.
Commission and House Committee investigation reports and transcripts. What follows is just some of that evidence that throws a wrench at the official narrative. starting with the gun. According to the government's firearms expert for the Warren Commission, a gunsmith from Aberdeen Proving Ground, the sight on the rifle was built for a left-handed shooter. Also during the Warren Commission, Oswald's brother John testified that Lee was right-handed. The rifle, an Italian Mannlicher Carcano, was also horribly inaccurate. Test firing done by Ronald Simmons, the chief of infantry weapons for the Army, showed it fired high and to the right. Then there was Sebastian Latona, the FBI expert for the Warren Commission. He personally dusted the gun for fingerprints, and, well, here's an exchange with him and assistant counsel Melvin Eisenberg. I was not successful in developing any prints at all on the weapon. I also had one of the firearm examiners dismantle the weapon, and I processed the complete weapon, all parts, everything else, and no...
What is a mudfucker? What is that? Is that like some racial term? What does that even mean? What the fuck does that mean? I've never heard that before. It sounds very racist. Bro, Jackson Hinkle fans know different levels of racism that I've never heard before. Like, I've never even encountered before. And I know all the fucking racist terms. Wow. That's wild. Huh. Like, I pride myself on being the racism sommelier, and I'm out here learning new shit that I didn't even know existed. What does it mean? What? Anyone who uses falsehoods and blatantly lies to justify a self-elevated position? When someone is having anal sex and person taking it up the ass shits? Huh. What? God damn, stop fucking posting. Oh my God, dude is like losing his mind. He's like, dude, you have to understand what this fucking term is. It is alarming. I must get it to you. Probably the anal sex thing.
Latent prints of value were developed. Does that include the clip? That included the clip. That included the bolt. It included the underside of the barrel, which is covered by the stock. Were cartridge cases furnished to you at that time? They were, which I processed, and from which I got no prints. Therefore, the net result of your work on Exhibit 139 was that you could not produce an identifiable print? That's correct. After shots were fired at Dealey Plaza, the scene of the crime, dozens of people, including at least 21 Dallas police officers, immediately rushed the so-called grassy knoll, searching for the killer. The grassy knoll at Dealey Plaza stands in front of where Kennedy was shot, while the Warren Committee concluded that all shots were fired from the president's rear. Out of 216 witnesses, 52 said they heard shots coming from the grassy knoll, while 48 said the book depository. 37 couldn't tell where the shots came from, and 70 weren't asked at all. An hour after the assassination, Secret Service agent Richard Johnson received the so-called magic bullet, which traveled through Kennedy's throat, from Parkland Hospital head of security O.P. Wright. Wright was previously a Dallas police officer himself, and well-versed in rifle cartridges. He described the bullet as a .30-30 round with a pointed tip. It did not resemble the magic bullet that was shown to him later, the one now held at the National Archives. That one has a flat tip. It wasn't only Wright who didn't recognize this new bullet, but also Secret Service agent Richard Johnson, Secret Service Director James J. Rowley, and the orderly who found the bullet at Parkland Hospital, Darrell Tomlinson. Also at Parkland Hospital were the two surgeons who operated on Kennedy and attempted to save his life. Both surgeons believed that Kennedy had been struck from the front as well as the rear.
The bullet that killed him, I think, was fired from the front and hit him in the hairline and then blew out the back of his skull on the right side.
And this is where your thinking differs from the Warren Commission's report?
Yes.
They reportedly came under intense pressure to remain quiet about it and wouldn't come forward for nearly 30 years. Dulles would claim that after he heard the news of Kennedy's death, he would head back home to Washington, but his own personal datebook reveals that this was a lie, and he actually spent the entire weekend at Camp Peary, known by CIA case officers as the Farm. The Farm is the location of a secret training base for CIA officers of the Directorate of Operations, the clandestine service of the agency. Here, recruits are trained in espionage before they're sent overseas. From November 22nd through the 24th, Dulles, the now retired spy chief, would set up a base of operations there. This highly eventful weekend would see the arrest of Oswald, his questioning by Dallas police, the return of Kennedy's body to Washington, and the return of his limousine, where Secret Service agents dumped water into the bloodstains in the upholstery, completely destroying the evidence. Oswald would also be murdered over the weekend. Future CIA Director Richard Helms would personally persuade President Johnson to appoint Dulles to the Warren Commission. He wanted to make sure no agency secrets came out during the investigation. And of course, if Dulles was on the commission, that would ensure the agency would be safe. Johnson felt the same way. He didn't want the investigation to dig up anything strange. Over the course of the investigations, Dulles would write novelist Rebecca West, struggling to come up with a motive for Oswald. I wish sometime you would sit down and write me a line as to why you think Lee Oswald did the dastardly deed. All I can tell you is that there is not one iota of evidence that he had any personal vindictiveness against the man Kennedy. 3 years after the Warren Commission ended, 2/3 of Americans polled did not agree with its outcome, which said that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. At the end of 1969, Allen Dulles came down with a bad case of the flu, which was so severe that it left him bedridden. By Christmas Eve, Dulles would be in Georgetown University Hospital. The infection had spread to his chest and turned into pneumonia. A month later, on January 29, 1969, Allen Dulles finally passed away due to complications from his illness. He lived to be 75 years old. So, who do you think killed Kennedy? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone, and a special thank you to my patrons. Plenty more videos on the way. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Thanks, everyone.
Bro, I don't know. Okay? I don't know. I still think it's sus. Guess who's back in the Israeli government? Oh, yeah, of course. Ben-Gvir. Of the Jewish Power Party. Thank God, they're back. It'll never not be interesting that Israelis just simply can't comprehend that.
I've been in Spokane for.
Bombing Gaza is seen as like an exit ramp for these guys, and a very successful one, always. Always and forever. No matter what happens, you predicted denaturalization was coming 7 years ago and it still hasn't happened, and you highlighted this false prediction. That's such a funny thing to say right now. How can we think we know anything about history when we can't even tell for sure who shot the most powerful man in the world on camera just 60 years ago? I don't know. It makes sense. It happens. Let's see what this guy's best video is. The history of the CIA, Operation Sunrise, and the plan for a new Europe, Part 2. I kind of want to watch one of this guy's videos, but